saw Nelson Piquet win the 1983 World Championship on ESPN. And in 1984, the competition centered around the dominant McLaren team featuring Niki Lauda and Alain Prost, teammates dueling for the World Championship.
The checkered flag is waiting for Alain Prost. Alain Prost takes the checkered flag to score, indeed, his 7th win. He's congratulated by the McLaren mechanics, but his heart must be heavy because he hasn't got the championship. Once again, it slipped from his grasp in the final lap because here comes Niki Lauda. Niki Lauda takes 2nd place. Niki Lauda takes the World Championship, and Lauda is champion for the 3rd time in his career.
In 1985, Prost had his day of glory.
Clark corner, and here it comes, Jackie.
Through clearways, Alain Prost will raise his hand. The McLaren team will be ecstatic, and there they are there, the Marlboro McLaren team.
In '86, 3 contenders entered the last race of the season to decide the World Championship.
Mansell will trail now. And Mansell, Nigel Mansell is out of control. He's trying to hold on to that car. Nigel Mansell has had a rear tire explode on him. Tremendous ramifications on the championship. Are Mansell's hopes dashed? I think so, John.
Best drivers on the circuit. Alain Prost, you're doing beautiful. It's the last corner. You're coming down the grid. The checkered flag. Alain Prost is the World Formula One champion of 1986.
Brazil is known for its jungles and its mountains. Rio de Janeiro, it's known for its beaches, Ipanema and Leblon in the Copacabana. Hello, I'm Jackie Stewart, and I'm standing right now on the Ipanema beach. Now, we've been very fortunate over the years at ESPN to bring you the World Championship of Formula One Grand-Prix racing. And here we are this year again in Rio for the opener of this year's '87 season. And of course, Brazil, as a country, has had an amazing record in sports. It's won 3 world championships of soccer, for example. But it's won 4 world championships in driving, starting off with Emerson Fittipaldi, then another great driver, Carlos Paci, arrived. Then Nelson Piquet came along, Ayrton Senna. There's a young driver in England right now from Brazil called Gugelman that you might not have heard of. But if you had come here 5 years ago, you would not have known the name of Ayrton Senna. Brazil has produced an amazing amount of talent in Grand Prix motor racing. Fanatical about its sport, the fans that will come to the Rio de Janeiro Grand Prix of Brazil will indeed be an excited lot. We had an opportunity to speak to Nelson Piquet and Ayrton Senna about how the crowd and the Brazilian fans affected them.
The people here being so after the Brazilians and on the grandstand going mad when you go down straight is a special feeling and a special motivation, and you always want to do a bit better, but at the end you can only do your best. If the car goes well, you'll be there. If the car doesn't go well, you cannot do anything else. You can only try your best.
It's more difficult because here I have all the friends together, all the family and everything. It's more a little bit more aggravation for me. But of course, it's more pleasure winning Brazil. I've been very lucky. I won 3 Grand Prix already in Brazil, and of course, I will be trying very hard to win again here.
This pre-race report is being brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? In Grand Prix Formula One racing in 1987, there are some new technical changes. For example, there are several normally aspirated engines running in this Brazilian Grand Prix. The turbocharger is very much still here, but this year it's got to run with a pop-off valve. There's had some troubles in qualifying and practice. To explain more about this pop-off valve, here's John Bisignano.
The 1987 Grand Prix season brings two types of engines back to Formula One, normally aspirated and the turbochargers. Now, for safety reasons, they've tried to reduce the power of the turbochargers. They were getting up to well over 1,000 horsepower, and the way they've done this is the way that Indy cars have survived for years, for the first time in Formula One. A pop-off valve, actually made in California. What this does, it's connected to the plenum chamber. The plenum chamber is that part of the engine which will be fully forced to the maximum bar that the engine develops. Bar, that means how many atmospheres the turbocharger is developing. This pop-off valve is made to open at 4 bar. Now, no one really knows exactly what horsepower this is going to affect each individual engine. They're trying to get down from about 1,000 horsepower to 800, maybe 700 horsepower. But right now, for the first time in Formula One, we have a pop-off valve situation controlling all the turbocharged engines. We talked to Gabriel Cardinger, the man who's responsible for these valves, about how everything's working.
The team managers take completely at random the number of the valves that they use for the weekend, and we check them before giving to the teams on Friday morning, Saturday morning, and before the race on Sunday. And each day we collect back the valves and we check them again. We have our own laboratory with all the equipment to assure to the teams that the valve is properly adjusted.
Why has this rule come into effect in Formula One? What's the purpose of this?
For two reasons. Safety. We want to limit the power because we passed the 1,000 horsepower last year, and we want to limit the power for a bigger safety and also for a reason of cost, obviously.
Another difference about this 87 season is that this year there is only one tire company in the business. Here's John Bisignano for that story.
Leo Mel, director of Goodyear Racing. The only for sure thing here in Rio is that the winner will be on Goodyear tires. You're supplying the entire field.
Yes, this is the first year we've done that. We've made arrangements with all the teams. We brought one type of tire instead of the usual 3 or 4 types, and everybody seems to be getting along just fine.
Well, what about the thrill of victory with competition? Maybe yourself and even management before were glad that there were 2 or 3 other tire companies in Formula One. Has it taken some of the sweetness away?
Well, it's probably more work than it was before because we have more cars to take care of. So the work factor is very high, and the satisfaction is not as great. We will have to change the tire about 8 times during the year to meet the different requirements for the different circuits, as well as always bringing rain tires and backup tires. So the work factor is very high. The teams seem to be very pleased with the results. As long as the teams are pleased, we're pleased and we're learning something.
This pre-race report has been brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? Rio de Janeiro. Behind me, the pits and the garage area for the Brazilian Grand Prix, and it's just before the beginning of that race that we speak to you. Hello, I'm Jackie Stewart. This is John Bisignano. Over the last 3 or 4 days here, temperatures in this area have been up to about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, from a driver's point of view, I know it's very uncomfortable. It must play a part in the race, John.
Exactly, Jackie. As you say, it's very uncomfortable, but with that type of outside temperature, the cockpit temperatures can actually reach 140 degrees. Now, a driver can lose up to 9 pounds over a 2-hour Grand Prix, so the heat relative to human resource is a great factor here in Brazil.
Well, the human factor is one thing, but the mechanical factor is another. This year, qualifying and practice has shown that the Honda engine is still very powerful. Piquet and Mansell are fast. Also, Ayrton Senna's quick, and he's got a Honda engine this year. The Ferraris are looking good. A long drought for them. It would be nice if they could do well. The Ford engine is better than it's been in the last 12 months. It's looking good. It looks like a good season, John.
I think it's going to be a fantastic season. Bernie Ecclestone, at the end of last year, said that this year was going to be a mixed season. Of course, when you have turbocharged cars up against normally aspirated cars, that's always going to be true. But up front, they're running as closely as ever.
Well, thank you, John. Working with us here in this Brazilian Grand Prix is Jerry Garrett. He's in the pits. Let's go to him.
Well, John and Jackie, the story down here in the pits today is going to be tire wear, and because all the tire wear, these pits are going to be a very busy place. All the non-turbo cars are going to stop at least once and maybe twice. The turbocharged cars are going to have to stop at least twice, maybe 3 times, depending on their tire wear. We asked the Goodyear tire engineers just how tough is this track on a tire. They said on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 12.
So on this staggered grid, fastest in qualifying, Nigel Mansell of Britain. Just almost alongside him is Nelson Piquet of Brazil, both of them driving Williams Honda cars. Third fastest is Ayrton Senna of Brazil with a Honda engine Camel Lotus. And then Theo Fabi with the Benetton Ford. A tremendous performance for him. He's fourth fastest. Alain Prost, the reigning world champion, is fifth. Terry Boots in another Benetton Ford. He's in sixth position. Gerhard Berger is the faster of the Ferrari drivers. He's in seventh position. Eighth fastest is Derek Warwick, the British driver driving the US F&G Arrows with the Megatron engine. That's the BMW-based engine. Ninth fastest is Michele Alboreto in the other Ferrari. A little disappointing for him. Stefan Johansson, his ex-teammate, who has moved to McLaren with a tag engine, makes up the top 10. Then comes Riccardo Patrese, 11th. Nakajima, the Japanese driver with the Lotus, he's in 12th. Then De Cesaris, driving a Brabham this year, is 13th. Eddie Cheever with the other Arrows car is 14th. Nannini, 15th. Campos, a new driver in the Minardi team, he's in 16th position. Christian Danner, Jonathan Palmer, Martin Brundle with the West car, he's back in 19th position. Streff is 20th, Caffey 21st, Fabry, the young French driver, he's 22nd, and making up the field, Ivan Capelli, he's 23rd. The Formula One Grand Prix of Brazil is brought to you by BF Goodrich TA Radials. They make your car perform. By Quaker State Motor Oil. The new Quaker State with QSX keeps your engine cleaner to last longer. And by Pan Am. You can't beat the experience. You're looking at the 30-second board. The cars are on the grid right now. They're going to do one pace lap. You're looking from where the starting light will be shown to the drivers. And we're, of course, warm as ever here in Brazil. The temperature is showing just 100 degrees right now. 100 degrees, not on the track or not inside the car, so it's very warm indeed. It's slightly misty, almost a slight layer of cloud, so if the sun were to come out, I think you would get a tremendous amount of heat coming in here. We've seen temperatures right up to 104, as we mentioned earlier there. So the cars go off on this warm-up lap. It's 61 laps in total, 60 racing laps. And now around this track, it's a track of 3.126 miles around. It's got 11 corners. 7 of them are left-handers and 4 of them right-hand bends. The present lap record stands to Nelson Piquet at 133.546, but in practice and qualifying, Nigel Mansell went round in 126.28 miles an hour. That gives you some indication of what's involved. Most of the cars are using 6-speed gearboxes as they go around this racetrack. The slowest corner on the track is the one coming onto the main front straightaway. It's a 60-mile-an-hour corner. They get up to 187 miles an hour at the end of the straight, so that's quite a fast rate of knots to be traveling. It's a 4th gear corner at the end of the straight, and that's a tricky one to maneuver. A very twisty racetrack, very smooth, quite hard on tires, an enormous amount of track wear here for tires. In fact, Goodyear have got extra tires over for that purpose. Jerry Garrett's down the pits right now. Jerry, what do you have for us as the cars just went out onto the track?
Well, Jackie, all week here, the Williams cars have really had it their own way, but in the warm-up this morning, that changed. On full tanks, these cars aren't as good as they were. Prost and Alboreto. Alboreto went from 9th on the grid of the top 2 cars going into this race, and they've been changing things on the Williams cars right up to the start of this race, hoping that they can change things like the brake balance and the settings and so forth on the suspension.
The other car that's done very well in early morning qualifying was, just as Jerry said, is Alboreto's Ferrari. It was not quite as good as he expected it to be here. They are competitive, but they've done well in the warm-up this morning. John, it looks like the Ferrari may be competitive this year.
Well, they've had a couple days of tough practice and qualifying here. Alboreto was certainly disappointed. He never really felt that he got the best lap out of the car. He only qualified 9th. Now Berger, his first time in the Ferrari, is up in 7th. But again, very quickly talking about the full tanks, Prost, the current world champion, was the fastest man this morning on the full tanks. Then Alboreto, and then Senna, Mansell, Piquet. So right up front there, it's going to be just as tight as ever, and Prost is going to do what he does best. Just sit back and start picking them off, keeping control of himself and his equipment.
Well, we've got 22 cars starting this race. This is one of the smallest grids we've seen in Grand Prix racing for a long time. We would normally expect 26 to be on the grid, but the Ligiers are not here because their engines were not available. Alfa Romeo suddenly announced a withdrawal of their engines. The Lola is not here of La Rousse. His team is not here because they're not quite ready yet. And actually this morning the March car withdrew. They ran out of engines, and they were not able to put their car for Capelli on the starting line. It had been the last qualifier. Just to run through the grid one more time, Nigel Mansell's on the pole. Next to him is Nelson Piquet, and then Ayrton Senna, the two Brazilians. As you look here, we've got a picture from Nakajima's Camel Lotus with the Honda engine. We've got a camera in that car as the cars come down to a stop now. The Mercedes at the back of the grid is with Professor Watkins. The medical people will follow them round in the first lap. The red light is on anytime now, and the green light has gone very, very quickly. And the two Williams go away with Senna passing. Oh, Piquet looked like he got a very good start, and in fact Mansell dropped very bad. So Piquet leads the field. Senna, both Brazilians up there. Fabi is third, and the other Benetton is fourth. With this is a tremendous start for Nelson Piquet, the two Brazilian drivers in front of their own crowd.
Of course, this is what Nelson Piquet's been dreaming about all week long, or all year long. He's won 3 of these Brazilian Grand Prix. He's told us he's looking for his 4th, but Senna says, I'm right on your tail, Nelson. This is my country too. This is one place where you can hear the spectators over the cars.
So the two Brazilians lead away there. It does look like the Benetton Fords are now in 3rd and 4th position. Then you have the other Williams with Nigel Mansell. The sparks fly on full tanks. The top suspension is tight as they come down the main straight, doing about 185 miles an hour at this time through a 4th gear corner right now. Piquet takes it through there. Remember, the tires will now be up to temperature. And he's really got quite a healthy lead. He's got a little breather there. The Honda engines have proved to be very, very fast. And we see a replay now of the start from the high camera. And you can see there's a car left on the grid now, but you can see Nigel Mansell really drop behind there.
Nigel has had a bad luck at this racetrack for the past 2 years. In fact, he's about to complete his very first race lap here in 3 years. The past 2 years, he's been knocked off the track in the very first corner or the very first lap. So Nigel Mansell will at least be happy to make it a clean lap. It looks like it was a clean start. That car left on the grid was one of the Brabham cars.
Well, Alain Prost is back in 6th, then the two Ferraris 7th and 8th, and then a Brabham is up there, followed by Johansson, who of course is now driving McLaren.
Nelson Piquet doing what he does best, leading the Formula One Grand Prix here in Brazil.
Going in through these fast corners there, a right-hander here before the slowest corner on the racetrack. Getting into the 60-mile-an-hour corner. It's a 2nd gear corner for him. Accelerating now, he's got to come out of it clean. He's in 3rd, he's in 4th already, getting into 5th gear, then getting finally into 6th gear, getting up to 185 plus miles an hour. You see the sparks flying, an enormous crowd. They say it's between about 140 and 150,000 people here, and they're very, very excitable. Nelson Piquet, very smooth. He really has to demonstrate now his skill and talent. I think he fell off the pace last year quite a bit. Alain Prost took the position in my mind halfway through last season as being really the best driver in the world. Until that time, it was my opinion that it was Nelson Piquet who held that spot. But I think he's out to do it this year again. He's got weight, he's thinner than he normally is. In fact, I've never seen the man look better as far as his condition's concerned.
I think you're exactly right, Jackie. Last year he did fall a little bit off after leaving the Brabham team for so many years and coming into a new position with the Williams team, and it's really been an adjustment for him, but he has done very well, and at the end of last year he was as strong and as his teammate Nigel Mansell and came very close to winning the World Championship.
Well, you know, we've got the driver weights for this Grand Prix. He weighed in at 69 kilos of weight with all his equipment, his helmet and everything else, and that weighs in around about 5 kilos, a little more than 10 pounds, 10.5 pounds of weight just for the overalls, the underwear, the shoes and the helmet. So if you take that off the 69 kilos, you'll recognize the man's down to weight.
That's about 155 pounds, 69 kilos. And he does look very, very trim. In this heat, it's fantastic that the drivers can actually control the body loss of fluids is fantastic. They have lost up to 9 pounds here in each individual race. But when they are this fit and he's used to this type of heat, that is a bit of an advantage.
Nigel Mansell, incidentally, just passed one of the Benetton cars and got himself now into 3rd position. So Fabi's in 4th position, Alain Prost is in 5th, then I think it is Terry Boutsen's in 6th position, then 2 of the Ferraris, 7th and 8th.
Coming into this last corner before the pit, that's a very important corner. The last 2 seasons we have seen the lead actually change there due to missed gears later in the race. The fatigue factor getting to some of these drivers, and with a 6-speed gearbox, it's a very tight box and easy to select the wrong gear. If you're in the wrong gear there for just a half a second, at least 2, it may be 3 seconds are lost down the grid. And there you see the Brabham coming by Andrea de Chisres going around the Zach speed. It was Andrea that was left on the grid. We're glad to see that he has gotten back up to speed and moving on up through the cars. But Nelson Piquet sliding that Williams through those S's, but behind him, the new car, the new Lotus, the new color scheme, always within sight. And one of the Minardis has just come into the pits.
Piquet heads himself down the front straight. He goes past our commentary position, then Senna, then Mansell's caught up. Mansell's caught up very well. Then Fabi, then Alain Prost comes by. Then we have Terry Boutsen. We have Berger, then Alboreto, then Patrese and the Brabham, Johansson, and then Derek Warwick. We're at the Brazilian Grand Prix in Rio de Janeiro. The weather is hot, and we'll be right back after this. Is Nigel Mansell, the man who was in pole position, catching up Ayrton Senna, who's now in 2nd position. Senna is under pressure. He's driving, and the first 3 cars in this race right now are Honda powered. We've got Nelson Piquet still leading, then Ayrton Senna, both of them Brazilian, of course, and then Nigel Mansell in the other Cannon Williams Honda, now putting a great deal of pressure, and I think you're going to see a pass. I think Nigel Mansell will do the Lotus. Now, Jerry Garrett's down in the pit. He's got some information on Ayrton Senna. Jerry?
Well, Jackie, just before the start of the race, Ayrton's crew gambled. They changed the computer setup on the fuel, and it seems to be supplying the fuel a little better to the engine, and he's running a little quicker with a little less effort than he has all weekend.
Well, that's good news for him, but I fear that he's going to be passed in a short while. The pressure up front is very hard, although Fabi in the Benetton Ford, and the Ford is running extremely well. I suppose surprisingly well away, because it didn't have a good season last year, and it's certainly become very competitive this year. Ayrton Senna, with, of course, that new sponsorship, Camel are in there with Lotus this year, and of course the big change for them is they've got the Honda engine instead of the Renault, and they've got an active suspension system. And there you see the order, the first 6. Piquet and Senna, Mansell, then Fabi, then Alain Prost. You've got to look out for Alain Prost. Now in 5th position. In 6th, Terry Boutsen, then Berger, then Alboreto, then Patrese, and then Stefan Johansson, and the 2nd Marlboro McLaren.
Well, we will only know if that change in the computer fuel system is the right one towards the end of the race. And I must say that Senna is not the easiest person on fuel. Historically, he has run the engine as hard as it can go and has been left fuelless several times in Grand Prix during the past several years. But right now, Nigel Mansell is just stalking him. He's just staying within the same distance, trying to conserve his car, not letting Senna or his teammate, Piquet, great rivalry between those two, get away. Nigel Mansell just hanging in there. He has certainly set himself up for a pass while we were away at break, but right now, Jackie, I think he's just sort of stalking him.
Well, I think he's going to have to be a little calculated in this. While that was all going on, incidentally, Johansson has passed Patrese into 9th position, so that's happening. And there you see him pass the start-finishing line in front of the pits where they're getting their information. And here you see another pass taking place on the main straightaway. That's, in fact, the pass of Johansson getting past there. He passed Patrese. That was a replay. Back to Senna, of course, these Brazilian cameramen looking very much for the local heroes.
And they are heroes down here. Everyone cheering. The whole main grandstand here seats over 100,000 people. And of course, when Piquet and Senna rolled up to the grid, the sound was fantastic. The Brazilians look at these people next as gods more than heroes. And right now, they are doing exactly what this huge crowd came here to see.
This racetrack, very hard on tires, as we said earlier. We would expect at least 2 pit stops for tires, and we would expect that first pit stop to take place around about 17 or 18 laps into the race. You'll see the cars coming in and getting 4 tires fitted and going back out. It's a slow pit entry, so the good pit stop is very important here. You can lose a great deal of time coming into the pits.
Also, the teams, this will be their first pit stops of the year. They've been practicing for the past 2 days, and get down to a good 7, 8, 9 seconds is actually quite respectable. But it always happens here in Rio as the first venue. Those pit stops can be a little bit rushed, a little bit sorted, and somebody is actually coming in the pits. It is one of the Williams, and it is the leading car. Nelson Piquet has come into the pits, and he's actually moving very slowly. Garrett, take it away.
Well, right now we're down here looking to see what they're doing, and they want to change the tires. They've had the tires out here for a couple of laps. The tire wear, we mentioned at the beginning, is critical on these Williams cars on full tanks. They're not getting good balance. The fronts are wearing out like gummy racers.
Well, Jerry, that's fine. I think there must be a problem because they've only completed 7 laps. So that is certainly not what would normally be expected. Now you will have to see those Williams cars, at least Piquet's car, stopping 3 times. It'll have to stop another 2 times for tires because of that distance. So now another Brazilian takes the lead. Ayrton Senna is in the lead, closely followed by Nigel Mansell, the man who lost the World Championship last year in that final round in Australia. Ayrton Senna went into that race competitive, and Alain Prost is now attempting to pass and has got through into 3rd place. He has passed Theo Fabi and the Benetton Ford. So now Alain Prost, the reigning world champion, the man a lot of people chose at this race to win it, has now got himself into 3rd position. Mansell is now increasing the pressure on Senna because, of course, he clearly knows his teammate is out because they're in radio contact with their pit in the box area and the pit area. So Mansell will know what's happening to Piquet. You saw them clearing out the radiators as well to keep all the grass and the papers because this enormous crowd have littered the track. So we've still got a Brazilian leading. Ayrton Senna is leading Nigel Mansell with Alain Prost in 3rd position. We'll be right back after this. The Brazilian Grand-Prix just outside Rio de Janeiro. Magnificent day of weather here. We're all in good shape, and right now the man in the best shape may well be Ayrton Senna, the young Brazilian who has shown such tremendous natural talent over these last 2 years. Everybody expects him to be world champion. I think it's a bit much to ask him this year to be world champion. This new car of his could be trouble because the active suspension system could show up to be a little bit of a teething problem for him. And as you can see, not only is Nigel Mansell close behind him, but Prost is closing up as well.
Prost is closing up. He led this race last year, and he is just hunting them down. He's hunting down both the Lotus and the Williams car. The Benetton into the pits of Bobby coming in the pits. Bobby was running fourth place. Jerry, can you see that pit stop?
Yes, it's an early tire stop. I think that they're getting that earlier tire wear that we talked about at the top of the show, that they may be having to stop 3 times in this race with the turbo car. 3 times, imagine that.
If you wanted to know where Nelson Piquet entered this race after his stop, he came back in 12th position. He had pulled out. There's a shot of Bobby, the Italian, in this fantastically painted automobile, but we were talking about Piquet. He came back in 12th position, and he has moved up into 11th, but still he lost tremendous ground. He had pulled out a 2.6 second lead, but still he found out that he could not do that and be able to conserve his tires.
So now it's a question of those drivers with this turbo power trying to squeeze the power on, trying not to scrub the tires, trying not to get the temperature up, and trying to conserve everything. That's a difficult thing to do when you've got someone breathing down your neck. And of course, Senna and Mansell have never been friends. They've come together several times in racing. And look how close Prost is. Alain Prost, he is a tactician. He certainly, for me, right now, is the best driver in the world. He is intelligent. He's very skilled. He has enormous natural ability. Even the crowd here are waving for Alain Prost as they come by here. Tremendous cheer up from the crowd to show that his skills are being appreciated to the full.
Well, it looks like Nigel Mansell may have been concentrating a little bit too much on what was going on behind him, because the leader has pulled out just a bit in that bright yellow Camel Lotus. Senna has definitely pulled away from Mansell, but Prost is right up his exhaust. It seems like it's on the brakes that the McLaren has the advantage. The Honda power down this straightaway is unbelievable, but when it comes into the twisty, turny parts of the circuit and on the brakes, Prost is able to gain ground.
And the crowd again have got great cheers going up, and the cheers going up this time is for Piquet. Every car he passes, they recognize his catch-up, they recognize the pass, and again you see this tremendously partisan crowd, and then Prost makes an effort for a pass, and he's done it. Prost is into second place at the end of the main straight. Now, the Honda power plants were supposed to be so much faster than the TAG Porsche McLaren unit, and that's impressive. The fact that he's just accelerated past at the end of the straight. And we hear from Jerry that there's going to be possibly another stop made by one of the Williams cars, and of course Jerry Garrett is down in the pits with our own camera, so we'll keep up with that as we see a replay of Prost going past Nigel Mansell, almost like he was standing still.
Let me ask you, Jack, if you think that the tires on Nigel Mansell's Williams could also be a problem for him at the moment. He was definitely dropping off of Senna, and I was wondering if Williams is getting ready for a pit stop, and it is the Williams coming in. It's Nigel Mansell. Jerry, he's coming into the pits. Take it.
Well, this is apparently part of a 3-tire stop strategy for Williams. The Goodyear people say that they feel like their tires, their cars, run better on these good tires in the traffic early in the race. So that's why they're making the quick early stop.
Well, as he pulls out of the pits, and you can hear that power plant pulling out of the pits right there, we see Alain Prost getting ready to stalk Ayrton Senna, and Senna's car is loose. The tire temperatures of Senna's car has gone up. You saw the back end breaking away there, and you see Prost again being the professor that everyone calls him, and he of course is ready to win any number of Grand Prix this season. Back down to Jerry in the pits.
Well, right now we're trying to see what the commotion is down at the other end of the pits here. It's a little bit out of our range, and we'll check on that and get back to you.
Well, as the race continues here, Ayrton Senna, intelligent himself, for such a young person with such a small amount of racing experience in comparison to Alain Prost, he's showing a great deal of maturity. It's very easy for a driver, particularly in front of his own crowd, to make little mistakes. But look, this is a slow corner, and watch Prost gobble him up there. He's really right in the slipstream, and if he puts him into position for the main straight, as he pulled out and passed Mansell, you may see that occurring in a few corners' time. He comes round one of the slow corners in second gear right now, accelerating into third, into fourth, into fifth. As they go up there into fifth gear, they get back down into third gear for this long right-hand bend. And And as I look down from the commentary position, we've got one of the Ferraris coming into the pit. It's Alboreto heading for pit lane. That may well be a tyre change also. This super abrasive surface now. Here is the slow corner. Look how he stopped him. He's got him right as we go back to the pits there for Alboreto. Watch Prost if he can do it. Wait for it. The very slow corner is coming up after this. Right there, they were doing about 150 miles an hour. Wait for it. Watch Prost.
It's the same setup that he used on Mansell all through the corners. He's eating them alive. They're coming on to this 185-mile-an-hour straightaway now. The Honda power, the Lotus gets the power down very well. They exit the corner very well. I don't think Prost is going to make it past this time. He's actually lost ground on that straightaway. But under the brakes, let's see what he does. He stays right behind him. He says he's not going to try now, Ayrton. Ayrton Senna protects his ground here in Brazil like no other place. It was at that exact position last year that he had Mansell off. And if Jerry Garrett is saying that the Williams people are thinking ahead for 2 more pit stops, they might think that that is a good strategy, but it's a very time-costing strategy, Jackie, and the way that they have entered the race, a good 10 to 12 positions down, I cannot see them making that up.
Senna's coming into the pits. Senna comes into the pits. He slowed dramatically there as Prost now takes the lead. It's a mixed feeling down here in the pits. Below us, the grandstand are sort of mellow now at the fact that Ayrton's in the pits. Jerry, are you down there?
Yes, we are right now, Jack, and they're going to change all 4 tires. They've been expecting Ayrton for a couple of laps now. There's no other concern on the car, no other adjustments. They're putting on all 4, and this is going to be a very quick pit stop. They had trouble with the left rear there. He's away just a little over 15 seconds. In the battle of the pit stops down here, the Williams team has definitely won. PK and Mansell were in and out in less than 15 seconds, both of them. Meanwhile, over the Ferrari pits, they were in and out in 20 seconds.
Well, we've got a 12:42 for that stop, and Alain Prost now is in the lead. And that, you see him going through slower traffic. He's getting past Cafe right there as he comes down here, accelerating hard away. We're in Brazil, we're in Rio, and we're coming back. This is the leader of the race. Alain Prost is leading. Terry Boutsen in the Benetton Ford is second. Berger in the Ferrari is third. Nelson Piquet is up to fourth. Johansson is fifth, and Mansell is sixth. That's what they were showing is right there. Alain Prost, the reigning world champion, holding his tires together extremely well. And you can see a Williams getting through the traffic there, passing one of the Ferraris of Alboreto. Alboreto's car is very unstable as he went through the big long corner at the end below our commentary position. Although you can't see that, you're looking at Alain Prost easing his way around here. He's driving with a great degree of precision. And that smooth, gentle way, quite frankly, is the only way to drive, particularly when you've got to save tires. And Prost knows, of course, that all those other cars have been in for tires. They've already completed 15 laps, and Goodyear told me beforehand, Lee Gogg said, the good ones will wait till lap 17 or 18, and if they can do more, they're going to be in great shape. So you can take that from the gospel. I think you're seeing Alain Prost behaving very intelligently with regards to his tire wear.
One thing about this McLaren team is that there has been a big change in designers this year. Gordon Murray has left the Brabham team and replaced John Bonnard, who actually brought Ron Dennis's McLaren team to so many championships over the past 3 or 4 seasons. But Gordon Murray has been the man who's actually gone into the Marlboro P4 McLaren and even made it a better chassis than it was before. It's had the best track record in early testing of all the cars, and here in Rio, it's certainly working out very well. It's saving its tires. Lap 17 is coming up very soon. We'll have to see how well the chassis is conserving those tires, because that is going to be a major factor in the end of this race.
The tire story here is a big one. Goodyear brought 2,000 tires as Ayrton Senna's teammate Nakajima goes into the pits, as we can see this from high above. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company brought 2,000 tires here. That's a lot of tires. They sell these tires nowadays to the Grand-Prix teams for about $300 a tire, although they in fact cost, I think, around about $600, so that's no small investment. Of course, they fly them down here, and that's a pretty expensive experience. The crowd cheering again as Prost comes in. Prost
is in the pits. Alain Prost is coming into the pits. Jerry, are you down there?
Yes, we are, and it looks like the Prost has done the best job of saving his tires up to this point. And as you mentioned, Jackie, this is going to help him enormously as this race goes on. He's probably going to be able to do better on tire wear than anyone the whole race. A very quick stop down here.
Well, he went out 2 seconds faster than, in fact, Ayrton Senna went out in. As you see the leaderboard back up again. Now, he'll have lost that lead, Prost will have. That was the lap before that the Longines timing is quoting. He was 2 seconds faster, and the 2 seconds were because Senna had allowed his car to come out of gear. And when he came in, he was trying to engage gear, and he took a little while for that first gear to engage, and he lost 2 seconds right there. So we've got the Grand Prix of Brazil, we've got Terry Boutsen under pressure. We'll be coming back to Rio after this.
Holiday Corner, or the North Corner, here in Rio. And it's one of the most important corners on the entire circuit. The reason is because it leads down this very long straightaway, almost 7/10 of a mile. Now, getting into the corner, the driver has to get his braking right and select the proper gear, and then hit the apex just perfectly, down there where those red and white stripes are. Now, right in this area, he has to move his concentration to putting as much power down on the road as possible, what they call exiting the corner, because that will determine the velocity of his speed all the way down the straightaway, up to 180 miles an hour. Now, coming up this little slope here, he's actually going beyond the adhesion of the tires and the chassis. He'd actually end up out there in the grass if it wasn't for this little curb. But they go up against the curb, collect themselves up, put as much power back down on the circuit as possible, and down the straightaway. So when you see drivers blowing one another off down the long straightaway here in Rio, it's not always due just to horsepower. It can be due to how well they exit the North Corner.
You're looking at the leader of the Grand Prix of Brazil, rightly so. Right now it's a Brazilian, if you like. Nelson Piquet is leading the race. It was he who passed Terry Boutsen just as we went to commercial, and he was, of course, taking that pass to get himself back in the lead. Remember, he's been in the pits. Boutsen has not yet been in the pits, but there we have another Ferrari, incidentally, slipping into the pits. John?
Just a couple comments about Terry Boutsen. He's 29 years old. This is his 58th Grand Prix start. He got into Formula One racing with the Arrows team. His lovely wife Patricia is here, and he's very happy so far this season with the Benetton car. And we have a spin on the track. It's Nannini. He's lost the tire. He may have lost that tire actually before the spin. He was in the pits earlier. That was a very quick corner that he was coming through during the spin, but he seems to be all right. You can see the car going up on the curb and certainly induced a very hard spin. We don't know if the tire was lost before the spin or the spin and hitting the curb induced the breaking of that wheel.
It looks like the wheel, in fact, has broken, not the tire that's come off. It looks like a clean break of the wheel. I think it may have had a hair crack or something, because the car went into extreme oversteer, and only when the extra knock of hitting the curb came into play did, in fact, the unit disintegrate. But that could have been a very nasty moment. It was in a fast left-hander that would normally be taken around about 150 miles an hour, so it was no easy matter. We may well see that again be replayed by Global Television, who are the national feed that we have here, as the race leader comes up to pass the young Japanese driver who is the teammate of Ayrton Senna. That's Nelson Piquet just in the picture. Nakajima is the man who he's behind right now. He's had a lot of laps in Formula One cars while testing in Japan, and Piquet just gets through so easily.
Well, Nakajima is very eager not to make any mistakes here in this first Grand Prix. His Formula 3000 experience in Japan has been very good. You see the fastest lap being set by Nigel Mansell there. 118 miles an hour is a little bit slower than his fastest lap here last year, but still well into the three figures.
So Nelson Piquet continues. He's leading the race. Then you've got Terry Boutsen in second. Nigel Mansell's up to third. Alain Prost is back into fourth position. Ayrton Senna is in fifth, and Stefan Johansson is in sixth. This race is going to keep jumping from one leader to another as those tire changes play their part. They're getting very good at changing tires, and Prost has passed Boutsen, it looks like.
Very clean pass right at the end of the straightaway. We are sorry that these passes are not being presented to you on camera, but again, this is not an ESPN camera crew working here. It's a national feed, and of course, when you have a Brazilian out leading like someone as popular as PK, it's hard for them to go back into the field. There's some very good racing going on for third, fourth, and fifth position at the moment.
PK is coming back into the pits. As we've had a replay here, PK comes into the pits. Nakajima. Jerry, are you down in the pits there? PK's in.
Yes, we are, Jackie. This is part of the legacy of that earlier pit stop. It's forced his sequence earlier. We got word from Williams that part of the problem on that first pit stop was those clogged radiators that you mentioned. Drove the temperatures up dangerously high, and that's got him off of sequence.
So 11 seconds and 22 hundredths as the car accelerates out. PK and the Williams team have always been good in their pit stops, well-manufactured pit stops. And there you see Nigel Mansell, and Nigel Mansell now is probably in the lead. He's just ahead of Alain Prost, so you can see what a jigsaw puzzle this is going to be to follow as a Grand Prix. It's, of course, a long race, and if we're going to see those sort of passes all the time, it truly is going to be exciting close to the end of the race. So Nigel Mansell is leading the Grand Prix of Brazil, and Alain Prost is putting him under a lot of pressure, and he's passed. Alain Prost gets passed in exactly the same position as he passed him previously. Remember, it was at the end of the straight. Nigel Mansell is now tucking in behind Prost. I say Alain Prost has been doing so well here, and here the pass comes up in slow motion. He just gets him towards the end of the straight. Nigel's put in a position where he's snookered. In other words, he cannot retaliate. There's nowhere for him to go but to let Alain Prost through. Beautifully done and executed. Doesn't put either driver at risk, and this is why Prost has won so many Grand Prix. So Alain Prost again takes the lead down here in Rio de Janeiro under very hot skies. We are coming back to you after this message. Position at the Grand Prix of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. Down here, it's 20 minutes to 2 in the afternoon. Alain Prost, the reigning world champion and winner twice of this Grand Prix, is in the lead as Nelson Piquet comes into the pits one more time. Nigel Mansell's coming into the pits. Nigel Mansell in second position. Jerry?
This is another one of those quick pit stops that they're hoping to get. They're hoping to make 3 of these tire stops all in less than 12 seconds. They figure if they can do that, they still have a chance to win the race. I don't know. That's a lot of time off the track.
Well, practice is bringing perfection, John, because that was a 9.30 second pit stop. Any of the Indy teams would be very pleased with that if they were to change 4 pieces of rubber in that car at that time. We're looking now at Ayrton Senna. The order as I give it to you just now is Alain Prost is in the lead. Ayrton Senna is now the man you're looking at in second position, and Stefan Johansson, the teammate of Alain Prost, who moved from Ferrari at the end of last season, joined the Marlboro McLaren team. He's in third position right now. Out of the race is Theo Fabi, who had a mechanical. Derek Warwick's had a mechanical. Campos, the young Spanish driver, driving a Minardi, he's out of the race with mechanicals, as Martin Brundle, who moved from the Tyrrell team to the Zach West team. Zach Speed have the West sponsorship. He's out of the race. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, including Nannini, who you saw, if you were looking earlier, having a moment. He's out with the loss of a rear right-hand wheel.
Jackie, the Lotus team has been doing an awful lot of testing so far this season, but much of it has been taken up with this active suspension. There you see Senna coming by his teammate Nakajima. I'm sure Nakajima would move over very easily for Ayrton to come by. But Senna seemed a little bit disappointed in the active suspension before the start here in Rio, and he definitely felt that it has taken up too much of the team's testing time. He wants it to work. He wants to work on it and make it work because he feels that that is the way that the team is going to have an advantage, the only way that they're going to have the advantage that it takes to catch the Williams.
So Ayrton Senna going along there. We had the opportunity, John Bisignano had a chance to speak to Peter Wright about the new active suspension system used by Lotus. Let's hear from John now.
Active suspension, it's a great name. How does it work?
Well, it's a computer-controlled electro-hydraulic suspension system where the springs and shock absorbers are replaced by hydraulic systems under the control of the computer. The nearest analogy to it is a human suspension. A human doesn't have springs, it has a brain like a computer, sensors and muscle.
You have a tremendous bank of computers here and everything. Do you think that the driver is actually less important because of this system?
No, we're trying to help him by gaining information and tying it into what he tells us. And also, we're trying to give him a car which is more progressive, easier to drive, so that he can race it. We're not trying to take any control away from the driver.
Peter, you mentioned about the driver. What happens if this thing shuts off in the middle of a 140-mile-an-hour corner or something?
Well, we've taken every precaution we can think of to give him the time to adjust to the changing car. Obviously, the car should be going quicker because of the system, and if it quits, then he's probably going quicker than he should be. But we have backup springs for the system to fail on, and we have precautions and warnings to the driver.
Lotus has always been an innovator in Formula One. Is this going to be the wave of the future? Will everyone have to have active suspension next year?
Well, we would like to think so. There is maybe a tendency that if it is as successful as we hope, people may gang up on us. But yes, that's our intention.
The battle you're looking at is really with the second and third cars in your picture. That's Stefan Johansson and the man immediately behind him, Nelson Piquet. This is for third position, this battle. So Piquet is now stalking Johansson, trying to get around Nakajima, the young Japanese driver who's come in to partner Ayrton Senna. Now they're entering an area of the track where they might be able to get Nakajima. Johansson pulls out. Piquet follows him. Watch Piquet try to duck in at the end of the straight. Will he get through or will he not? He's going to make an effort. He's going to draw alongside, and no! A brave man is young Stefan Johansson. 62 kilos of weight, but he's certainly got equipment on him in the way of courage that would suggest that he can close the door in front of a partisan crowd on, of course, Nelson Piquet. Not an easy move to make.
Well, Stefan Johansson is from Sweden, and he's very happy to have this McLaren ride. They left it until the very last second to actually confirm this ride for Stefan Johansson. He had to wait all winter long and even almost until the springtime when he was by the Marlboro McLaren team. He has actually pulled a little bit out there on Piquet. When someone tries to put a pass like that, it upsets them just a bit, and he might have taken that back part of the course to get himself set again. But Nelson Piquet is looking to lead this race for the third time. He only has Stefan Johansson, Senna, and Prost in front of him. But Jackie, he had to stop for this, on the 7th lap for tires and on the 21st lap for tires. And pretty soon, these tires on this Williams car of Nelson Piquet would be coming up for maybe their third pit stop. He's driving the car extremely hard, as the leaderboard shows you. Prost, Senna, Johansson, Piquet, Mansell, and Berger.
So they continue along here. It's a real sort of tortoise and the hare situation, and of course that's been because of the tire wear factor. In fact, Jerry Garrett's right down there with Lee Gogg of Goodyear, and of course that's the professor when it comes to tires. Jerry, down to you.
Lee, what's the story on tires down here? Who's winning the tire war in the pits among the teams?
Well, we had anticipated making 2 stops, and Williams came in very quickly. Actually, Piquet's problem was radiator, grass caught in the radiator, overheated. Now, evidently, Mansell has the same problem. So they're coming in about every 10, 15 laps to clear the radio. Right now, Alain Prost is in a driver's seat. He's made 1 stop, expects 1 more, and is still faster than everybody out there. So he's winning.
Do you think Williams is going to have to stop too many times to have a chance to win the race?
I expect them to stop 2 more times yet, which is going to, I think, hurt them.
Okay, so that comes from Lee Gogg, and that's the situation as we know it right now. You can see, let's run down the field just for this moment while we have a moment. Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna's in second place, Johansson's third, Piquet's fourth, Mansell is fifth, Berger is sixth, Patrese now in the Brabham is up to seventh, Alboreto in the Ferrari is eighth, Terry Boutsen in the Benetton Ford is ninth, Eddie Cheever in the US F&G Arrow is 10th, and Nakasawa, the Japanese driver, Nakajima, is in 11th place. So that's as we have it right now, as again we look towards Nelson Piquet, stalking still Stefan Johansson. My, must he be glad to have that McLaren drive. Johansson, he left Ferrari. He was fortunate in the first place to get into Ferrari a couple of laps ago. And as I say that, we've got a situation here with a flat tire coming into the pits, Jerry, if you're listening. With Terry Boutsen, he's had some sort of failure in the rear end, and the tire is disintegrating as he drives into the pits. Are you down there?
We're down here right next to the Ferrari pits, across from the Senna pits at the moment. We're trying to check and see if there doesn't seem to be any suspension damage on that car, but maybe they'll be able to get that back out without too much more problem.
Well, it may be difficult to get it off, Jerry. Is the wheel coming off okay?
And is back on with a new tire, and he's underway, and doesn't seem to be any problem. What a break.
That was an amazingly fast stop. They only did one tire. In fact, and Ayrton Senna, by the way, is heading for your area as well, Jerry. Ayrton Senna, of course, driving the Honda engine Camel Lotus. He's entering the pits.
This is about when we expected to see Senna, according to this 3 pit stop strategy. So they're making no unusual changes on the car, just the tires. When you stop this quickly, it's hard to take much other changes.
Well, he got it away in 9.47 seconds that time. He got it in gear at the appropriate moment. But in fact, I think Lee Gogg and Goodyear told me they would expect them to come in for the second stop around the 37 or the 40 lap stage. So it could be that Senna might have to make an additional stop, because that was only after 28 laps that he came in, and I think we might be into some trouble there.
Of course, with that pit stop, that makes the leaderboard come up to Prost leading, and actually has almost a 15-second lead at this time. As you see Stefan Johansson in the other Marlboro McLaren coming by, closely followed. There comes the Williams right alongside. Piquet takes another look, but says, I was there before, and the door was slammed on my toe. So he did not push it as far as he did the first time. Stefan Johansson seems to dominate at least the back half of this course. That area you see in the background there is a lagoon. That, in fact, the corner they're going through right now is called Lagoon. Here in Rio, the temperature is going up. We see it's 35 degrees here. It's 104 degrees. The cockpits can be 140.
We're back in Rio de Janeiro again as Nelson Piquet is trying to hound Stefan Johansson. Johansson now is leading this Grand Prix. Stefan Johansson hasn't had the privilege of leading too many races. He nearly won Imola last year. He was leading that one with only 1 lap to go, but was to lose it because of running out of fuel. Now it's a question to see if he can keep his end up for the McLaren team, while his teammate Alain Prost has been in for his tire stop. So I think we're going to see some good things from Stefan Johansson in this McLaren team this year. The team is very well set up. They did not win the Constructors' World Championship last year. That went to Piquet, and you see Piquet's car was moving around a lot on the road there. Look at him. He's losing grip and adhesion, whereas the McLaren just seems to be a lot more sure-footed. It may be interesting to see this, because we'll just keep an eye on them and see if Piquet is having to work that little bit harder.
Stefan Johansson is 30 years old, from Sweden. You saw there just the Brabham tweaking again. The Williams tweaking just a bit coming out of that corner. Again, what Jackie was pointing out is it looks like another set of tires having a bit of a problem there on the Williams car. He did not even take a look at the end of the straightaway. As you see the leaderboard, it's Prost, Johansson, the Swede, Piquet from Brazil, Mansell from Great Britain, Senna from Brazil. But Stefan Johansson, of course, he lives in Monte Carlo. He has a very nice, lovely American girlfriend who we all enjoy here on the circuit. She's certainly a very cheerful person, and it's nice to have some American ladies within the Formula One group. Stefan Johansson met Charlotte at a Grand Prix of Belgium 2 years ago. And Stefan Johansson has always been considered the number 2 driver in the best teams that he enters, and he's fighting to get to the number 1 position. In Ferrari, he scored twice as many points as his teammate last year. The Conduttore Ferrari still, out he went. And the Conduttore says, go, you leave. And in came Berger. So Stefan Johansson had that difficult winter that we talked about, waiting until February to actually be confirmed within. Certainly one of the best teams in Formula One, McLaren.
Oh yes, one of the best too. I think the 2 teams to go for, if I were a driver right now, would be Williams and McLaren, not necessarily in that order. Let me just run down the leaderboard here as we have it unofficially up here. We've got Prost driving for McLaren, and Johansson, of course, is at the present time. Now, Prost has now taken the lead. So therefore Prost is leading this race, and in second position we've got Stefan Johansson. Stefan Johansson is second, then Nelson Piquet is third, Nigel Mansell is up to fourth again, Ayrton Senna is fifth, Berger sixth, then Patrese driving the Brabham is seventh, in eighth is Alboreto, then ninth is Eddie Cheever, the young American, who was brought up in Phoenix, or born in Phoenix originally. Then Terry Bootson's in 10th position, and Nakajima is in 11th position.
Alboreto has come into the pits for another set of tires, but it's Alain Prost who's absolutely dominating this race. He has almost a 14-second lead. He is out of sight of his teammate, as you see here, Stefan Johansson. He's looking in his mirrors at Piquet, but at the moment, Piquet cannot even challenge him, and he's actually losing ground. Piquet has to be looking at those tires and saying, oh, Lord, not another pit stop. That's going to cost him a good 45 or 50 seconds on the track.
And he's definitely dropping back from Johansson. We've now passed the halfway stage in this Grand Prix of Brazil. Just an interesting point with regards to engines. This team that you're looking at right now, the McLaren team sponsored by Marlboro, brought 12 engines for this race for those 2 drivers. To give you some indication of the numbers involved here, Williams brought 12 Honda engines, Lotus brought 10 Honda engines, Ferrari brought 9 for themselves, Brabham have got 11 BMW engines, Ford brought 9 along, Tyrrell have 7, Chariot, the small team, very small team, what Campos was driving for, or rather the other young driver was driving for, it had only 2 engines. They came here with only 2 engines. Can you believe that? And that is a very small number of engines. March, who had to withdraw before the beginning of the race, blew all of their 3 engines and were unable to start. Ours have got 11 engines. Zaxby brought 7. Osella brought 4 engines, and Minardi have 7. That's 104 engines came for this Grand Prix with 22 cars starting. That's an amazing number of engines.
When you think of all the chassis and all the people, all the mechanics, there's a good 5,000 people coming just in the paddock for this particular race. That includes teams and journalists from all points of the world. Formula One Grand Prix racing, Alain Prost going by the AGS, driven by Pascal
Fabre.
I was waiting for your French pronunciation there. I would say Fabre, but Fabre is the French way to pronounce it correctly. And Pascal, his first year in Formula One, his first Grand Prix, actually.
And that's the car you're looking at right now. It looks rather old-fashioned to me. It looks like one of the old Formula 5000 cars, which is slightly out of date. The car in the center of our picture is certainly not old-fashioned. That's right up to the state-of-the-art.
This McLaren, over the last several years, it hasn't changed that much. This is the greatest change I've seen to the body work and the suspension, the rear end, the ducting, and again, that's all Gordon Murray moving from the Brabham team into the Marlboro McLaren team. John Barnard has engineered that team for the past several years with Ron Dennis, coming from the P4 team, the Formula 2 team that Ron Dennis headed up before he took over the McLaren Marlboro team. But certainly Gordon Murray has had a bit of a influence on the way this car looks. Gordon Murray was the gentleman who designed a very, very low Brabham last year, and you can see that the side pods of this McLaren are definitely lower, and now the Brabham, Jackie, is one of the tallest cars on the circuit, so they've gone from the ultra low to maybe a bit high.
Yes, but they are doing reasonably well. Patrese is reasonably well placed. He's in 7th position, 8th position right now, which is not all bad. And that's better than they've been doing for a long time. Piquet does not seem to be able to do anything about Johansson at all. So we're at Brazil. We have Alain Prost, the reigning world world champion trying to win yet another Grand Prix. The weather is warm, slightly overcast, and we'll be back. Jackie Stewart, John Bisignano and Jerry Garrett here in Rio de Janeiro covering the Grand Prix of Brazil. You're looking at the man in second position right now carrying the number 2 on his car. And that, of course, is Stefan Johansson. Boy child, they call him, or child boy, depending on where you come from. He's a sort of mischievous-looking little fella. Weighs 62 kilos, is almost Skelf-like, but is fit as a fiddle as he comes into the pits. He's coming into the pits right now. So our second place car is coming into the pits as Nelson Piquet takes second place. Jerry, are you down there?
Yes, I am, Jack, and it looks like just a routine stop here as usual. The McLaren team looks very calm, very self-assured at this point. These guys seem to have everything going their way. Hands up, wheels on, car down, car out of the pit very quickly.
Well, as he roars away there, that's him in good shape as he exits pit lane without any drama. That means that Piquet now is firmly into second place as one of the Ferraris head towards pit lane. It's Berger, who of course left the Benetton team to go to Commendatore Ferrari. Every racing driver wants to go there. Nakajima is also coming in, or is that Ayrton Senna? Senna is coming into the pits. No, it's Nakajima. Nakajima. It's very difficult to tell this Dayglow yellow helmet from a white helmet from our position.
Speaking of our position, Jackie, over the past 2 seasons, we have somewhat described the Brazilian broadcast as a third world broadcast. We must say that we actually have glass between us now, between the track and the cars, and that you have seen several Grand Prix from Brazil, but we're glad to say this may be the first one that you've ever heard. So it's a pleasure to be up in an air-conditioned booth with all the latest facilities. Thank you very much, Brazil.
Absolutely, and there you see the gap between those two, the 31.5 seconds between Prost and Piquet. So we've got that. As Piquet we have almost a situation going round that final tight corner where he almost comes into contact with a slow-moving car. That could have been an expensive little kiss of wheels for Piquet in front of the main grandstand here. So Nelson Piquet trying to keep that car cool, trying to keep those tires cool, trying to coax himself all the way along. Nelson Piquet, if he could win this race, this would be a major issue for him. And there you see this pass. He gets underneath that driver. As he comes in, the other driver loses the rear end slightly and almost collides with them, so Piquet must have had a little breath of relief. He must have looked in that rear view mirror and I'm sure scowled, and in fact he did it in front of his own pit crew.
In that replay, Jackie, you actually saw Pascal Fabre wave the Williams car to the inside, but as he took his hand off the steering wheel, the back end came around and surprised both him and Piquet. Right now, the leaderboard shows Alain Prost with almost a 27-second lead over second place Nelson Piquet, Johansson, Mansell, and we have coming into the pits, we see the leader coming into the pits right now. Jerry, I think you should be right across from that position.
Alain Prost down here making another one of his routine pit stops. All four tires going off. The next four going on. Crew's hands are up, the car's down, and he's away. Looking at my watch, I'd say that's probably less than 12 seconds.
Well, it was 10.56 seconds, and it was a real fast, full-service stop he had there. He had his windshield wiped, he had his oil checked almost. It looked like they just missed out the battery because they wiped down the mirrors and did everything else. Very impressive pit stop by the ever-efficient team. So that was an impressive one for them.
You saw the smoke coming up from the brakes of that McLaren as he came into the pits. This particular circuit is not so tough on brakes, although it's very hot outside and they do brake hard into several corners. The straightaways are long enough to where the air ducts can fill themselves full of air at very high speeds, 140, 160, 185 miles an hour on the longest straightaway here. It allows the brakes to cool down, but still, just in that second that he stopped, you could see this red-hot disc glowing in the pits and the smoke coming up from them.
Okay, So there you see Alain Prost back again in the lead. This is almost like a NASCAR stock car race. There's so many lead changes. He says he's the current leader in the graphic that Global Television have put up for us, and that's important because we've had more lead changes in this Grand Prix, and I haven't counted them, than any Grand Prix I think that I can remember. It's just constant change. It's very difficult for us, even up here with the lap chart, to keep pace with it.
Well, a lot of them have come because of pit stops, but they have also come because of just hard driving at the very beginning of this particular race. Their drivers were coming back and forth, changing, under-braking in the corners everywhere they could. But the pit stops have been the big story so far here in the heat of Rio.
We are, of course, at Rio de Janeiro for the Grand Prix of Brazil. Jackie Stewart and John Bisignano will be back. Fourth place is Stefan Johansson from Sweden in the McLaren, and fifth place Nigel Mansell of Great Britain in the Honda Canon Williams. Then Eddie Cheever in the USF&G Arrow is up to sixth place. Berger in the Ferrari is seventh place. Alboreto is eighth. Patrese is ninth. That is, we look at Alain Prost getting through the field here, again having to drive with this intelligence. Alain Prost, Mr. Cool when it comes to this, very well adjusted driver. He's got 25 Grand Prix victories under his belt right now. He has said that one of his motivating factors is to beat my total of 27. He's going to do it this year. He may get up to 26 right here in Brazil if he keeps driving like this. The great Juan Manuel Fangio has been here today. He did a demonstration driving around in his old Mercedes of 1955 and 1956. He won 24 Grand Prix victories in his 5 World Championships. Jim Clark won 25 Grand Prix victories. I was lucky enough to win 27. I've held that now for 30.5 years. So Alain Prost is surely going to take that away from me. And frankly, I couldn't think of a better man to do it. Records are made to be broken, and Prost is such a good driver. I'd be more than proud for him to have it, although slightly disappointed.
Oh, Jackie, now one thing you do have to remember is that you got those many wins with only 99 starts, and Alain Prost, this is his 106th start, so it's going to have to be someone else besides Prost that on a ratio basis beats the Jackie Stewart record.
Well, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's numbers that count. And the numbers that we see right now, big on the screen, is this car, of course, number 12 of Ayrton Senna with his bright yellow helmet. It almost clashes with his new sponsor colors. He may have to change the color of his helmet. Maybe he'll get Reynolds to change the color of the camel yellow. He's had a lot of power in the Lotus team. There was much talk that he had more power than anybody else. What Ayrton Senna asks for, he gets. And right now, the Brazilian crowd are giving him a lot of encouragement.
He has somewhat been that way, a very powerful person, all the way back to his Formula 3 days. He always knew exactly what he wanted and went straight for it. Coming from Brazil with a very low budget into Formula 3, but it has paid off, and his tires seem, or at least when he puts that power down, the front of the car washed out there. Just to review the top 3, we have Alain Prost leading this Grand Prix with Ayrton Senna, the person on the screen at the moment. Stefan Johansson in the other Marlboro McLaren is in third place. Nelson Piquet, the second Brazilian, is in fourth. Nigel Mansell, the gentleman who really deserved to win the championship last year, is in fifth. Berger, the new driver entering the Ferrari camp, is in sixth. We had Eddie Cheever in sixth in the USF&G Arrows team, but he came in for a pit stop, and he seems to be circulating even quicker than before, so we hope Eddie can at least score in the points. The points start from first and go down to sixth place, as you see the leaderboard here from a very warm Brazil.
Unfortunately, the camera that we had mounted in one of the cars driven by the young Japanese driver Nakajima was unfortunately rendered useless after only a few laps. They still have not got those cameras quite as reliable as they should be. I was covering a race at Long Beach last weekend, it was, I think, with NBC, and we had a camera that didn't show us any pictures either. We still have a lot to do in this field. Of course, tremendous electrical interference and a lot of heat put onto those cameras from the tight confines of the cockpit and the engine cowling. You might look at that McLaren across right now. Just in front of the driver, you see an antenna, an aerial sticking up, and it's absolutely in front of the driver's eyes. A lot of people would see it to be very disconcerting as he gets prepared to pass Terry Boutsen with a Ford-powered Benetton there. The Ford power unit is showing great, tremendous improvement from last year. Of course, it was run last year by the Carl Haas team, and they were breaking that engine in. And you see the fastest lap done by Piquet in a time of 1:34.435 seconds, which is quite a lot slower than he did in practice. So therefore, he's about 8 seconds a lap slower than they qualified at. And of course, that was with little fuel and the tires brand new and really cold, so they were able to put in a fast lap. There is Terry Boutsen and the united colors of Benetton. Very colorful, both the mechanics and the drivers and the car bodywork. Very colorful indeed. Terry Boutsen driving a very good race. Theo Fabi, remember, is out of the race. Unfortunately, he had a problem fairly early on. Alain Prost is very much in the race. He's leading it, and we'll be back after this message. Back at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Of course, you're watching ESPN, and all of you who do clearly watch Speedweek, ESPN's message to you about racing every Thursday at 7:30 Eastern and 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Now, the racing enthusiasts, of course, can take heart because Bob Jenkins and Larry Nuber are ready to fill you in every Thursday evening and all of the latest from the motorsporting scene. Of course, ESPN will bring you the best motorsports report with highlights and features from every series in racing. It's just one more reason why our auto racing coverage wins awards for the most comprehensive of its kind on television. We really are the driving force in every front across the racing scene. ESPN, your driving force in motor racing coverage. We're into, of course, the Brazilian Grand Prix, and Alain Prost is still leading the race. Ayrton Senna is still second. Stefan Johansson is still third. Piquet is fourth. Mansell is fifth. Berger in the Ferrari is sixth. Alboreto is seventh, his teammate. Patrese in the Brabham is eighth. Terry Boutsen in the Ford engine Benetton is ninth. Eddie Cheever in the Arrows car is 10th. And Nakajima, my goodness, he loves 11th place. He's been in there forever.
Double ones for Nakajima. Jackie, one thing I want to point out is that Prost is definitely taking it easy. He certainly went around. Ayrton Senna is coming down into the pits. Jerry Garrett, I think you have him coming into the pits. Jerry, can you see the action?
Yes, we're right here alongside the pit at this moment, and if everything goes okay on this stop, he should be able to go the rest of the way without getting more tires. But I think that he's going to have stopped too many times to really be up there and give Prost a chance to catch him. Give him a chance to catch him. He's off.
And again, a little bit of trouble with gear selection for him. And while he was in the pits, incidentally, Nelson Piquet has taken over second position from Stefan Johansson. So the order now is in the top four: Prost, Piquet, Johansson, and Ayrton Senna may have held his fourth place while he was in the pits. So that was a pretty quick pit stop from Ayrton Senna. Of course, it's very difficult to keep these engines revving correctly. They're so hot during a pit stop. And of course, the clutch factor, you've got to be able to engage gear well. Jerry, you're down in the pits. You have something for us.
We know, Jackie, they've said so many times that the races are won or lost in the pits, and I think that's certainly a lot of the case today. Ayrton's crew does not seem to be well choreographed. They don't seem to know what their man wants and when he wants to do it. Meanwhile, over in the McLaren pits, they seem to know exactly what their drivers want. They respond, the drivers respond, the pit stops go like a perfectly choreographed dance.
Well, we've already seen that work well consistently for them. We're seeing a white flag being waved as Ayrton Senna went past the pits a few moments ago. A white flag would suggest, not as in American racing, it's only one lap to go. It means that there's a slow car on the racetrack. Be aware. You can see that antenna in front of Alain Prost's eyes right now as he comes up to get that slow car there. He really bounced up on him. And look at that antenna. It's almost like a sight in a telescopic sight of a rifle. He must aim everything at it.
Well, he's certainly aiming by, and it's one of the Williams that's actually slow. That red and white flag is for a slowing Williams. You can see him on the right of the straightaway there. Prost P.K. Johansson, first three, but it's certainly one of the Williams.
Well, it's Nigel Mansell who's going very slowly. That's the end of his race, I should think. He's got a tyre problem. It's broken up his left rear tyre. Now, he's got to make all the way around a fair part of this racetrack. Now, if he goes too fast, that tyre's going to explode. The wheel already is hard on the ground. Now, Nigel, take your time. World Championship points are the things that he's got to look for. The other drivers have got to be careful because part of the tyre has come right off. Now, whether it's the wheel or the tyre, maybe the outside rim of that wheel is broken off. You can't see this. We're watching it from our commentary position. I'm sorry we're talking over a picture that you can't see, but we want to keep you advised. I don't think the global television people have recognized the drama that's just taking place here because, of course, Nigel Mansell's a major story. He lost the World Championship last year, as you recall. Here he comes very slowly. Look at the right-hand side of your picture. There's only half of that wheel left on. There is Nigel Mansell. It's the unloaded tyre also, and the sparks are coming from below. He's got to be so careful. He's going to damage the suspension because it will be on the ground. It'll be rubbing away. Look at the wheel. And he's now coming into the pits. He's only got about 100 yards. Jerry, are you there to receive this?
Yes, we are. We're right alongside the pit here, and you're right, Jack. He's just moving very, very gingerly right now. The whole wheel is locked up, and I think that there's a piece of that wheel lodged in the rear suspension. This looks pretty serious for him.
You can see the aerofoil's been damaged also, Jerry. You can see the tire's been rubbing against that rear wing.
Now, the crew's checking very carefully under there. They got the wheel off and back on very quickly. They're going to send him back up. There doesn't seem to be any real structural damage. The bent sheet metal around there is all. The under tray was bent around it.
Well, that was 12.33 seconds. Now, Nigel will be a very nervous young man because he's got to go out there now and he's got to have confidence that they've looked at the rear end and they have passed judgment that that car is capable to rejoin the race. He's got to feel comfortable with that because if something goes wrong now, it will be cause of damage that will have been done to that wheel and rear suspension unit by perhaps going against the road surface. So for Nigel Mansell, this is a nervous 2 or 3 laps that he's got to settle this car back in with.
Actually, Jackie, I was a bit surprised that they did not take a little bit more time in the pits. As you saw on TV, that definitely that left rear suspension had to be dragging from time to time. Certainly the right front tire was all the way off the ground. Nigel Mansell will be trying to feel it coming in and out of the corners to see if there's any extra play back there. But I was surprised that Ron Dennis of the Marlboro McLaren team did not hold him in the pits and check it very thoroughly. Nigel, of course, would want to get out as quickly as... I'm sorry that the Williams team would not check it a little bit more carefully and make sure that Nigel Mansell and his enthusiasm did not get back out on the track before he should have.
Alain Prost still holds the lead at the end of the straight here as he goes down into this first big left-hand corner at the end of the straight in 4th gear. As he goes through there, he's still in the lead of the Grand Prix of Brazil. We'll be back. We're back at the Grand Prix of Brazil. It's still an Alain Prost benefit at the present time. I have him in my watch here about 30 seconds ahead of Nelson Piquet, who's in 2nd position. In 3rd position right now shows Stefan Johansson, and Ayrton Senna is showing himself to be in 4th place with Berger in 5th place. But I saw Berger looking out of our commentary position right now, getting past Johansson. So it may be that Berger's come up here, and we're going to check our lap chart on that because Berger definitely made a pass on Johansson. One of the Ferraris, incidentally, is heading for the pits. It looks like it's Berger coming in. Gerhard Berger of Austria, wearing the colors of his country on his crash helmet, slipping into the pits and past. Can you get that down there, Jerry?
Yes, we're right alongside Jackie, and one of the things that Gerhard Berger has enjoyed today is a big pit stop advantage over his teammates. He's spent at least 15 seconds less on pit road than his own teammates.
Well, we are keeping coverage on these pit stops because they are vitally important to the outcome of this race, clearly.
Prost now, Jackie, with this tremendous lead. This is the time. We have one of the Brabhams pulling off the circuit. It is Patrese. He is slowing right in front of the pit. I'm sorry, again, we cannot put that on camera for you, but maybe there it is right now. We have Patrese, the Italian driver in the Olivetti Brabham team. He looks like he's going to try and make it right to his team. He pulls up right in front of the Benetton pit, actually. But Patrese, with the BMW-powered Olivetti Brabham, certainly out of the Brazilian Grand Prix. It was Patrese who actually passed out several years ago in the heat of the Brazilian Grand Prix. We've also lost Piquet on the winner's stand once in a while during the victory ceremony. He has passed out, and it is now up to lap 49 or lap 50 that the heat takes their toll on these drivers. Prost, it certainly seems, with a 31-second lead, he can ease himself off a little bit, conserve a little bit of energy, but still Piquet has set 2 new track records or fastest laps in this race over the last 10 laps. So Piquet, even though he's 31 seconds behind, is not giving up. As long as those tires will hold up, he will certainly be just as quick as he has ever been here in Brazil. But now, let's watch the heat, let's watch the fuel.
So we only have five cars on the lead lap, and you can see the emergency crews trying to eat the Brabham off the racetrack there. There's so many of them out there, these Brazilian helpers, that they may just eat it away because there's nowhere else to put it. They're trying to push it down the front stretch. It's really quite difficult. They're trying to pull it onto the grass. You're not witnessing this performance, but I think they may well try to carry it over a wall in a moment, if we can perhaps imagine that. It's no joke, of course, and look at this picture you're looking at right now. It's the Honda engineers working. They've got a live transmission of the information coming back to them from the cars of Mansell and Piquet, and that information is being sent to them instantaneously so that they know the mixture level, the turbo boost, the temperatures of the engine, so that they can even adjust them from the pits. And Ayrton Senna's in trouble right in front of the pits. It's not come onto the screen yet, but by Jove it will do because he's Brazilian. And right in front of the pits where Patrese stopped, Ayrton Senna has come to a stop, is getting out of the office. That is the end of the day for Ayrton Senna, and he was up into 4th position. So Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian hero, a very quiet crowd because it's right in front of the main grandstand here. You can see the Lotus mechanics in a dejected fashion because that was their only chance for victory today as a Lotus car.
Well, we've lost both the 4th place car as Ayrton Senna walks back, takes the balaclava off, looking for his pit to go over the wall. Jerry, can you see Ayrton Senna down there?
Walking back to his pit right now. They're pushing his car the other way. He's going to have a word or two with his crew. It's been a very frustrating day and an especially frustrating finish.
We can see from our commentator's position that Senna has not even gotten over the wall yet. He may be thinking of stepping out in the middle of the racetrack. He must be so disappointed. The crowd has gone very quiet, but of course this man on your screen now still carrying the green globe of Brazil around this track in 2nd place, setting 2 fastest laps. There's the Camel sponsorship on the new Lotus team. The Kenny there you just saw in the picture is the American, the gentleman who flies for American Airlines and works all the Grand Prix all over the world as one of the Lotus tiremen and pit signaler. He is the gentleman who handles the pit signals for Ayrton Senna. But right now the Brazilians are saying, hold on, Nelson, and 29 seconds. He's gone from 31 seconds behind the leader of Alain Prost to 29 seconds behind, a gain of 2 seconds, but there aren't enough laps left in this race. We only have 10 or maybe 9 laps left in this race. If Prost keeps his cool the way he has and is driving so slowly, not slowly, but so smoothly, he certainly won't have to come into the pits again.
Let us remind you of the leaderboard right now. Alain Prost is leading. Piquet is in second place. Stefan Johansson is in third. Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari is fourth. Alboreto is fifth. Boutsen is sixth, and Mansell is seventh. That's what we have at the moment, but it's constantly changing. We may be in a lap or two's time give you an update on that, because certainly the cars seem to be able to catch up an enormous amount of speed. Obviously, Piquet in front of his own crowd is attempting to do that, and you see the Benetton coming up fast as well. Now, he, of course, is trying to unlap himself from Piquet, because he is one lap behind Nelson Piquet. So don't get too excited up there in Detroit.
Well, that's again Terry Boutsen, who
down here with Ayrton Senna right now. Ayrton, it must be a very frustrating day for you.
It's not one of my best days, for sure.
What was the problem with the car?
The engine developed a problem and decided to stop here.
Okay, well, a tough day for a very talented young man, and a real disappointment for himself as well as the partisan crowd here.
Well, he decided to stop there because he doesn't have very much walking to do. Very sensible young man. If the engine's giving trouble and it's going to stop anyway, you may as well stop by your pit. So no walking for Ayrton Senna today, and all the driving's been done. Now Piquet is still trying to put on that pressure. There is no Grand Prix ever won until the checkered flag drops, and he knows that. And there is Alain Prost. He knows that also. He is the current leader. There's been many lap changes in this race, and Prost knows that he's got to be very gentle, and he's got to feed this car along without causing it any ill effects. He's not even using all the road. Again, he's driving with that wonderful intelligence that has brought him already 25 Grand Prix victories. Alain Prost, who is almost not a next-door neighbor, but we live close by each other along the side of the Lake of Geneva. He's a very keen tennis player, and there you see the leaderboard up there. Alain is a fit man, very strong, very fit. It's a prerequisite, really, of Grand Prix racing to be fit. Certainly the drivers keep themselves in great trim. Alain Prost leading the Grand Prix of Brazil, and we'll be back after this. Back in Brazil, we're back in Rio de Janeiro, and a very warm day. It's in fact a temperature of close to 100 degrees at the present time. It must be a lot warmer for Alain Prost, who's already completed 55 laps of those 61 laps, but one lap, of course, was the pace lap, so he's really down to 5 or 6 laps to go. He knows that number. He's been told. Cars out of the race are Teo Fabi, Nannini, Warwick, Campos, Brundle, Senna's out, Caffey is out, Cheever is now out, Patrese is out, and De Cesaris is out. So those cars are out of the race, still running, of course, the balance of the field. The top 10, as we have it from our commentary position, is Prost in first place, Piquet second, Johansson's in third, Alboreto's fourth in the Ferrari, fifth another Ferrari with Berger, then sixth is Terry Boutsen in the Benetton car. Nigel Mansell is down in seventh position. We might expect to see something from him. Nakajima is now up to 8th. Christian Danner, driving the Zach Speed West car, is 9th, and Jonathan Palmer, in a normally aspirated Data General Cortal Tyrrell, makes the top 10. That's the first normally aspirated engine to be running in that position at this time. And there is a championship for the normal aspirated engines this year. It's going to be called the Jim Clark Award for the driver, and for the car it's going to be the Colin Chapman Award. Those are 2 awards introduced by the governing body of the sport to try and get those people enthused about normally aspirated motors. And of course next year everybody's going to be running with the non-turbocharged engine.
Jackie, I know that Eddie Cheever has been counted out officially, but there he is back on the circuit in the USF&G Arrows car. He had a little bit of a long pit stop. Eddie back into Formula One this year. His only run in Formula One last year was at the Detroit Grand Prix when he substituted for Patrick Tambay in the Lola Haas Ford. But right now Eddie Cheever is circulating around. Ross Cheever last weekend, his younger brother, won off of pole position a race in Japan, Formula 3000 race. So the only American driver in Formula One has gone back onto the circuit and will give you an update on his position.
Well, he was in fact in the pits for 10 laps, was Eddie Cheever, so therefore I don't think he'll expect to do particularly well in this. Alain Prost, again, as I say, nursing this motor car home, being very gentle with it, as Prost can be, a man of average height, as I call it, a very small man in other people's minds, but my goodness, is he large in talent. Certainly one of the great drivers in this era of Grand Prix racing. A French driver to win the World Championship. There's been many French drivers before him. Jean Bérard back in the 50s. Jean-Pierre Beltoise in the 60s. Then came a great run of drivers from François Sévère to Jean-Pierre Jarier. There was Jabouille. There was many of them. In fact, at one time there were 7 Grand Prix drivers of French nationality making up a grid. Alain Prost is the one that has certainly brought more honor to the red, white and blue of France, the tricolour, that he's waved proudly as a great ambassador to the country all around the world. He's a spokesman for motor racing. He's just become the president of the Grand Prix Drivers Association that fell asleep for many years and now has been brought back to life. Alain Prost is going to be that man as president. Nelson Piquet, you had a brief shot of there, who's in second position.
Prost, of course, he's the current world champion. The year before, he won the world championship in '85, lost it by a single point in '84, and in '83, lost it by a half a point. So Prost, the first French world champion ever, has certainly come and gotten his just deserved the past 2 seasons in '85 and '86. Also, Jackie, the young Lions who have moved around to new teams are doing very well here. We have Stefan Johansson with the McLaren, his first running, he's in the points. Berger with the Ferrari, he's in the points. And Boutsen from Belgium in the Benetton team, he's in the points. So the second generation young Lions in their new situations have certainly taken advantage of the team changes and have shown up very well here in the Grand Prix of Brazil. It takes a little while for a driver to get used to a new team. I'm surprised that we have that many new drivers and new teams in the first 6.
Well, this is the first race, and a lot of things are going to happen. Alain Prost still leads. Nelson Piquet still in second place. In third place is Stefan Johansson, which of course is very good. And then in fourth place is Alboreto with Berger in the other Ferrari. In fifth place, Terry Boutsen with the Benetton is in sixth place. Nigel Mansell is still in seventh. Nakajima is still in eighth. Christian Danner is up to ninth. Jonathan Palmer is 10th. Philip Streff now is in 11th position. So there are constant changes down the field, but it does seem that Prost is holding himself more than 30 seconds in advantage over Piquet as he gets into a Ferrari sandwich right there.
Ferrari sandwich is always a bit of a spicy one, Jackie. No matter what happens, there's a great deal of competition between Ferrari drivers. Prost pulls out. Alboreto says, no, Alain, you're too far in the lead. I don't like to be lapped more than once in a race. Alain Prost doesn't really need to challenge these people. He has to be very careful of back markers, if you can call the Ferrari people back markers here. But Alain Prost now just trying to keep it as smooth as possible. The concentration at this point in the race can even be more difficult than when you're going for a new track record. He cannot let himself relax too much. He has to be still very aware of his car and everyone around him as that aerial is right in the middle of his sight. He does go around. No, he is Alboreto. Do you know who's next to you there? Please. The other Ferrari comes through on the inside of Gerhard Berger. And Alain Prost is taking it extremely easy in these last 4 laps. You don't think he could have a problem, Jackie. What about fuel?
No, I think he, in fact, did not expect the Ferrari to come inside him there. These Ferraris, incidentally, are not in the same lap. In fact, Alboreto is a lap ahead of Berger at this time, so that is not a big concern. Berger would like to unlap himself, obviously, but I think in the spirit of Italian prestige, Alain Prost wants to stay well out of it, just in case he gets involved in a situation that he can avoid. Right now, it's Alboreto who's leading this little number here, and he's still behind Alboreto. Berger is still behind Alboreto, so he's still a lap down on him. He would like to unlap himself, surely. Look at that. Oh, something's happened.
Alboreto's car.
Now there's Prost staying well out of this. He's going to have to watch it. care for Alan, he could get involved in something that is no part of his, and that is a major issue. Prost is just staying away. He's now recognizing he's got to get past, but he doesn't want anything to fly off of that Ferrari if there is a suspension damage, and it did seem peculiar that there were so many sparks came out of that car. It doesn't look as if there's a flat tire. Normally, with about 14 pounds of pressure in those tires, if a flat tire comes in, sometimes, of course, those sparks can come out of the car because the car's dropped. And it may be a tire that's gone down, but he hasn't chosen to come into the pits. He's continuing around the racetrack, so he must feel reasonably comfortable. But Berger is now unlapping himself. He's unlapped himself from Alboreto. And Alboreto's car is still touching the ground constantly as he goes along the pit straight.
You see those sparks coming up in the beginning of the race because of the extra weight of the fuel, and the titanium skid plates underneath the bodywork will drag along the bottom of the car onto the track over the bumpy parts of the circuit. But Alboreto now, there was just a huge flash of sparks. There must be a mechanical problem to cause that type of situation, but he's still out there. He's still going around a little bit more slowly.
Well, in all of that excitement, we did not tell you it's only 2 laps to go in this Grand Prix of Brazil. Alain Prost is going for his 26th Grand Prix victory, which will put him above everyone else, including Jim Clark and Fangio, and he's only got a couple more to better my 27. So Alain Prost has driven a masterful race, very smoothly, very intelligently. McLaren and the Tag Porsche engine can count themselves very fortunate indeed to be so well organized this early in the season with a new car. That shows the kind of dedication. It is big money. There's probably $15 million in their racing program for 1987, and that's no small money when you consider that a kart IndyCar program might be costing about $5.5 million with the most expensive team. Here is another $10 million on top of that. But technologically, it's so far advanced. Alain Prost crossing the start-finishing line one more time.
Our Olivetti computer says 59 laps, but that is always 1 or possibly 2 laps behind. We were thinking that there was a possibility of him actually taking the checkered on that lap, but here in Brazil they are definitely giving him
1 lap. I think he's going to get the checkered flag on the next lap around. I think you're going to see this checkered flag coming out. The man is standing in front of the barrier. We can see that. Alboreto, incidentally, did not come round. We talked about his car bottoming out.
You just saw it parked there on the side of the circuit.
And he has stopped. Sad one for Alboreto because he was well placed. He was up into 5th position, so that brings Boutsen up into 5th. And now Alain Prost continuing down the main straight. Alain Prost finding his way around to get this checkered flag. He passes our commentary position. He has half a lap to go as he goes round the long right-hander in 4th gear, steadily in 4th gear. He won't bother passing those slower cars. Oh, he goes over the curb. Naughty Alan. In this last lap, he mounts the curb, probably a little bit thinking of other things. Very slow car coming into the pits as Eddie Cheevers in the Arrow. An engine looks as if it may have blown very close to the end. And look at this little wrestle in front of Prost.
Nakajima doesn't want to give up on the last lap.
He's just Prost looking ahead and saying we've got to stay out of trouble. He's only got a few hundred yards to go right now as he comes up behind the Brabham. Alain Prost, France. 200 yards, 100 yards, and the checkered flag goes out to Alain Prost as he crosses the finishing line to win his 26th Grand Prix victory for France, for Alain Prost, for Marlboro McLaren. A very happy man. Wonderful performance by Alain Prost. Nelson Piquet and the press and everybody are crossing the racetrack without this race being finished. There's a lot of people right on the racetrack right now. Nelson Piquet has still not come in. Neither, of course, has any of the other finishers. We're waiting for Piquet as he comes round the final corner. Alain Prost waving to the crowd. Alain Prost is waiting. And now there is Nelson Piquet taking the checkered flag, and the Brazilian crowd go mad. They're waving their flags in their arms and they're clapping.
Nice shot of Nelson Piquet there. Well, he did the second best thing he could have done today, finishing second. But also, coming across right now, Stefan Johansson, his first time in the McLaren, coming in third. So the first three, Prost, Piquet, Johansson. Jerry Garrett has Crichton Brown of the McLaren team in the pits.
Well, Crichton Brown being congratulated by Joe Ramirez, the team manager. Crichton, you fellows have certainly done your homework over the winter. It's obvious from this race.
Well, we're very happy to have got both cars home so well up the field, and for Alan to have won yet another Grand Prix, and I just hope that this is going to be perhaps the pattern for the rest of the year.
It's been so calm, cool, collected, everybody's doing their job, just like a perfectly choreographed dance, as we said earlier.
Well, it's the only way you win in motor racing, is to keep you cool and try and keep the job on the, going along the way it should be.
Did you set up with the idea that the race is the important thing, that the qualifying is not that important in this race?
This is the consistent strategy which we've followed for the last 4 years, and I just think this proves perhaps that it's the right strategy.
Certainly does. Thank you, Crichton, and congratulations.
Well, there you hear a very cool, calm and collected Brit. The British mentality not to get excited, as of course that team get first and third place.
Crichton Brown also has the largest pig farm in Brazil, Jackie Stewart. So yes, he is a Brit, but he spends most of his time outside of England.
Look at those photographers right in the middle of the track as Alain Prost comes in from our helicopter shot here. Let me run down the top 10 for you. Alain Prost wins the Grand Prix of Brazil. Nelson Piquet is second. Stefan Johansson and the other Marlboro McLaren is third. Berger in the Ferrari, his first race from Ferrari, finishes in fourth position. Remember, Alboreto dropped out with about 2 laps to go. Terry Boutsen with a Ford engine Benetton car picks up World Championship points, 2 of them for finishing fifth. Nigel Mansell, he finishes sixth. Alboreto officially, we think, finishes seventh, although out of the World Championships points. Nakajima is eighth. Jonathan Palmer, Christian Danner is 9th, and Jonathan Palmer is 10th, as Nelson Piquet drives slowly in to the pit area, and he's coming in to take this second place. Stefan Johansson's behind him. Tremendously excited crowd here in Brazil. We'll come back to you with more information after this. The crowd are gathering in front of the podium, expecting to see the winners. The first, second and third drivers come up there as we look down from our helicopter. And what a race it was. So many lead changes, a real tortoise and a hare race, John.
Jackie, it was a very quick race there. You see Nelson Piquet taking a little sip of water, the Brazilian here. The crowd certainly wants to see him. Question is, the Williams was very fast, but maybe were they too fast? So many pit stops, it really cost him the race. New drivers doing very well in their new teams. 3 new driver combinations in the first 6, and Alain Prost still on the top, still with McLaren. His victory here in Brazil shows that McLaren is still the force in Formula One through the race distance.
Well, Mansell Rogier, the man who owns McLaren right now, he's down here, and he must be a happy man, first and third. Let's look at the top 10 here. We'll give you the top 6 showing, and that is fact. Alain Prost winning the Grand Prix of Brazil. Nelson Piquet of Brazil finishing second. Stefan Johansson driving the Marlboro McLaren from Sweden is third. Fourth is Gerhard Berger from Austria driving a Ferrari. Fifth is Terry Boutsen driving the Ford-engined Benetton car in the World Championship points. Also Nigel Mansell from Britain picking up 1 championship point. Then Nakajima comes 7th. Alboreto finished 8th. 9th was Christian Danner of Germany. 10th, Dr. Jonathan Palmer from Britain. Philip Streff was 11th in a normally aspirated engine, as also was Palmer's. The Data General Tyrrells finishing 10th and 11th. And then Fabra was 12th. Frank Williams came to see his cars win. It's almost just over a year since Frank Williams had his accident, which paralyzed him almost totally. He's a brave man. He's come to this particular race. He saw his car finishing second. So the Grand Prix of Brazil has been brought to you by BF Goodrich TA Radios. They make your car perform. By Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor Oil. Mobil 1 protects your engine better than any conventional motor oil. And by Acura Legend and Integra. Precision crafted automobiles. Exclusively at your Acura dealer. This is Jackie Stewart along with John Bisignano and Jerry down the pits. Jerry, thank you for the wonderful work that you did with us today. You got all of the information here in ESPN. We've brought you the first of this World Championship Series that will take us all the way around the world. Our next Grand Prix coverage will come from Imola, the Grand Prix of San Marino on the 3rd of April. Alain Prost holds high a rather crude trophy from the Grand Prix of Brazil. We're happy to be with you.